So recently I pulled two game changers for my Hydra team. Finna, the Blade of Aravia, and Arbais, the new mythical champion, out of the Sylvan Watchers faction. I was really excited to get them both. Wasn't sure how I was going to use them, but I've settled on using them in my Hydra team. Is it the best team in the world? No, but it's darn cool. And, I think with a better account, this could put up some ridiculous numbers. Welcome, I'm the Deadwoodjedi. This is a Raid Shadow Legends video, and today we're going to look at my Hydra team. This is not something I do a lot of, but I've been rebuilding a lot of the teams on my account just because I felt like I wasn't quite at the level that my account should be at for things, right? And so I've rebuilt more than a couple of Hydra teams. I've rebuilt some other stuff too, right? Like my arena team specifically, and just trying to do a little bit better job of treating my champions well, right? I want to gear them out in nice stuff, right? With good clothes on their back, so to speak. So one of the things I've been doing is fiddling around with some Hydra teams, and I've settled on, for one of my teams, this squad here. This is going to be for my brutal attack here on the clan boss, or the Hydra clan boss, right? Which is kind of an interesting squad. We've got Finna, the Blade of Aravia here, and we've got Arbais, I think the Stone Thrower or something like that, as the lead champion in this. They kind of make a pretty cool combo here. We've got Tuhanarok, we've got Molly. I'm using Rathalos as our damage dealer, and Bellinor to help activate activate Finna, I should say. So we're finna do some damage on Hydra. God, it's a terrible pun. Anyway, let's look at the team. I'll kind of explain how I'm using this, because one of the cool things about Finna, and Arbais to some extent herself, but Finna really enables a lot of how you're going to build your team, and can really offer some really interesting options for you when you're trying to build a team. So I'm really excited about her. So let's first break her down a little bit so we can see why we're using her, and then we'll take a look at the team itself and see how the combination of champions works. All right, so we got Finna, the Blade of Aravia here. I mean, she looks dope. She is dope. Very cool champion. I have her, and I think this is how you actually would prefer to build her, in a full protection set. If you can get a 9-piece, and this is like the only champion in my account I can actually do this with, it is a 9-piece protection set, and I think this is 100% the way to go. The main reason why are the way her skills line up, and basically this A3 especially, it's going to place 3 incredibly good damage buffs on all your allies. Increase attack, increase crit rate, increase crit damage. Now these are 2-turn durations. It's on a 3-turn cooldown, so normally you'd think it'd drop off. But of course, this is a faction lord champ. So if you bring in allies from the faction, you're getting a lot more out of her. Now, I think she benefits no matter how many allies you bring in. She is definitely going to benefit from it, right? But you really only need one to really unlock some of her unique abilities. And that's what we're doing with my team. If I could bring in more, if the faction was better, had a little bit more diversity in the types of champions it had, this would be a lot more useful. But this is kind of one of those champions I think is only going to get better with time as the faction grows, as they get more champions in it. Anyway, the first skill, right, grants an extra turn, right? So this is the big thing. If you get an extra ally from the High Elf faction in here, this skill on a 3-turn cooldown will grant you an extra turn, making it effectively a 2-turn skill ability. That's insane, right? Those 3 buffs basically staying on your entire team permanently. If you can get another ally in, she'll also do a full cleanse for your team, which is also really, really nice. And then a third ally will make it so none of these skills can be removed. That's less good, honestly. It's really not even that helpful. But that is something to kind of keep in mind potentially down the road. Now, the other passive is the passive ability, the other thing that really deals with having allies in your team. If you have one ally, they deal 25% more damage when attacking out of their active turn. So things like counterattack, ally attack will be more productive. Her kit is designed in that manner, but it's not as effective as you might think. So that's not something I've really focused on here. Like, we just don't have enough champions in the faction, out of the faction, to really make this kind of a real viable approach to things. With 2 faction allies, whenever a buff is removed or stolen, or expires, fills that champion's turn meter by 10%. This is pretty dope, honestly. This could be a huge turn meter boost. I think these two skills here from this passive ability, also the third one, allies ignore 5% of the target's defense for each buff on them. All of these passive abilities are extremely strong for arena, where if you have your buffs stolen and stripped at the start of the fight, you get this really nice 10% turn meter boost. That could be kind of insane when it comes right down to it, for each buff, mind you. Allies ignore 5% of target's defense for each buff on them, right? So like there's a lot of really nice things in this kit. The interesting thing about the second one is, of course, her ability with 3 allies means the buffs can't be removed. So it's kind of contradictory in a certain way, but it's still a really nice ability. It does lend for some interesting builds and ideas of how to go about doing it. Like you could put, for example, everybody in immunity and shield sets kind of thing, right? So now in like maybe have one really fast champion, like an Arbiter, for example, right? That gives an AoE buff. If we get interrupted, if our buffs get stripped, then all of a sudden everybody's getting a huge turn meter boost and we're re-interrupting the enemy, right? You could build a team around that concept. I don't know that I would. I don't think it really fits very well, but you could, and that's kind of the thing. But so anyway, whole point of this, you get that extra turn off this A3, right? The A2 then will place block, debuffs, block damage, counterattack on a target ally. Cool. But the biggest thing is that target of that skill, if it's not Finna, will reset the cooldowns of their skills. That's insane. Remember, we get an extra turn off this A3. Remember, everything's on a 3-turn cooldown. What that means is, in effect, you have a 2-turn single target skill reset. Every other turn, you're going to reset the skills of one champion on your team. That's wild and kind of insane. So that's what makes her so cool. And what we're going to do is we're going to pair her with a champion that has 2 insanely good abilities. And putting those 2 together, I think, is going to work really, really nicely. And I'm talking about Arbaeus the Stonethorn. Stonethorn? Weird? But okay. Her alternate skill set, right? Her alternate form has a taunt for 2 turns, including a stone skin for 1, continuous heals for all your allies, and then a leech and HP burn debuff for 2 turns. So within that kit that she has, she will not only taunt the enemy, but also place HP burn and leech on the enemy. This is going to enable our damage dealer Rathalos to always be fighting against HP burn, because our Arbaeus are going to be using those 2 skills every turn. It's only one of those 2 skills, because she's going to have them reset every other turn, which is kind of insane. Now, I know some of you might be going, well, why not pair, Finna with like a reset champion and have it happen every turn? And unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. Part of it is Finna, right? Her A2, the skill's cooldown can't be decreased. So it's only going to happen every 3 turns. Yes, she gives herself an extra turn. So the most this will happen is every other turn. That's the most you can get out of it, right? So you just can't reduce it any further. Alternatively, a champion that does a full reset like a Kymar can't have its skills reduced. Basically, it's only going to be someone that does either a 1-turn cooldown like a Painkeeper or an Emic, or it's going to be Yumeko. And if you have 1 Yumeko, you really want 2 Yumekos, right? Now, if you only have 1 Yumeko, Finna and Yumeko could be a good pairing, right? Now you're resetting everybody's skills every other turn. That is certainly an option, and an effective one, to be sure. But for me, I'd rather run my double Yumeko team and then run Finna separately on a different team, right? So that's what we're going to do. Now, one obvious pairing that you could be using in that role for Arbaeus would be Emic Trunkheart. And I think this might really be a better long-term solution. Might be a better choice, period, right? Because he does some amazing stuff for your team. In addition to, as we talked about earlier, a taunt with a shield for himself and an unkillable ability for all your allies. In addition to that, which is similar to Arbaeus, right? You're still getting that 2-turn taunt. But he also brings an AoE shield plus AoE skill cooldown. That's pretty nice, right? That's just how his skills work. Those would be the 2 skills he'd be using. So What that would enable is probably realistically not just having him use his top 2 skills, but anybody else on your team that has 3-turn cooldowns on their skills to be able to use just those 3-turn cooldowns, right? So a champion, for example, like Bellinor, has a 3-turn cooldown on his A2 ability, right? The one that does the AoE decrease defense and weaken. That would then lower the cooldown of that to 2 turns. So he would be doing this every other turn, essentially. That's a pretty sweet little add-on right there for a champion, right? And that would be for your entire team. So it would allow you to do some really interesting things as far as like how you want to, like the champions you want to bring in, the abilities that you want to bring in, be able to get the most out of them. You know, for an example for that, even on this team that we're using here, if we swap Arbais for Emic, we would be giving up the HP burn and the leech. That is like pretty big. This is why I haven't done that. But by doing that, Tuhanarok would be placing the block debuffs, the decreased attack, and the increased speed every single turn, right? I would probably try to substitute Molly for somebody else that can not only place provoke, but also add something else to the kit because they'd be using it every other turn. Maybe even like a Bivald who can provide some healing instead. Our Rathalos would only be using the A2 and the A3 skills, the AoE abilities, basically. That would be a significant damage boost. So like there are some stuff in here that could make that really, really nice. Certainly something to consider if you're going to do something like that. Like if you want to mix it up and not use Arbais, you want to use somebody else. That's kind of the idea that you want to bring in. You want to bring in somebody that's going to have at least one amazing skill you want reset all the time, or 2 amazing skills that you want to alternate, because that's essentially what's going to be happening here, right? One option would actually bring in like a martyr who brings in an ally, like what is an AoE counterattack ability, increased defense, but also as a provoke on that A3. Martyr would be using that provoke all day long as an example of something that you could do. And that would be a pretty good way to make a long-term provoker a lot more consistent for your team, right? Even somebody like a Krisk might be really good for that, being able to extend buffs every other turn, be able to put up the provoke every other turn. That would actually make him, be able to be used full time. So some interesting ideas as far as like ways to optimize this outside of what I'm doing here. But let's break down this team in particular. Okay, so with my team in particular, one of the things I wanted to do is use Rathalos as my damage dealer. And of course, you need a lot to be able to really maximize any single target, any single damage dealer in this game, right? You not only need AoE decrease and decrease defense and weaken. For that, I'm bringing in Bellinor. And I have Bellinor in a curse set. This is also going to help make sure that we get Hex out on all the enemies, right? So Hex, decrease defense, weaken. Super helpful skills to bring. So that's what we're bringing with Bellinor. Check. The other thing we need, obviously, is HP burn. That's where Arbais comes in because of that A2 skill here, providing an AoE HP burn. Also a leech, again, helping out with our healing abilities. That is nice. I mean, she provides a lot of healing anyway with her Roar of the Mistwood skill, putting up continuous heals on everybody. But even if that wasn't the case, having the leech out there would do a lot of the work for us. After that, those are the offensive skills we need, right? So now we've got 3 spots filled. But now we also need some protection stuff and some debuffs on the enemy. So what do we need? We need block buffs would be helpful. Decrease attack would be helpful. Decrease speed would be nice. And of course, you need provoke, right? So how do we get these things in our kit? Oh, yeah. And we're going to need some kind of cleansing for ourselves. So that's all the extra stuff we need. This is why it's small. This is why Hydra can be so hard, because you need so many different things. For this team in particular, right, we're self-buffing with Finna, but she's not providing any of that stuff. That's kind of the negative here. So we have to fill that with other champions. Obviously, Arbais is providing the taunt, which is just kind of a bonus ability when it comes right down to it. But what else are we getting? Well, we have Tuhanarok. She gives us increased speed. That's great. Increased defense as well. She's also giving us decreased attack and block buffs. And with the debuff spread, I can't say it's going to be on everybody all the time, but it's going to be pretty consistently up. That's a really nice ability. Then we got Molly here for the provoke ability. Also, Tuhanarok does a cleansing, and Molly does have a revive, which we will need. There are going to be times where our champions go down. So this seemed to be a pretty decent pairing for me. I wouldn't say it's the best, but it definitely works. Now, one of the things is I don't know if I could have another high health champion in this team effectively, we wouldn't necessarily need Finna. Because Finna, or we wouldn't necessarily need Tuhanara, because Finna would then cleanse debuffs, which is really, really nice. But didn't really have that possibility here. I don't think a provoke set's consistent enough to make that work for us either. So, you know, one of the things is I really wanted a dedicated provoker. That changed things a lot. I wanted, you know, I would rather have a dedicated provoker than a dedicated block buffs champion. And that's basically what happened, because Tuhanara's single target. The debuff spread, it helps, but she's single target. And, you know, I tried using Daliana for the AoE and just wasn't nearly as effective. So speed is really, really important. And then obviously that provoke is really, really important. I had Arbais too. She does decrease speed as a reaction when she gets hit, which is nice. It's not as good as being able to place it because it doesn't go on the decapitated heads, but it is still pretty good. But anyway, let's jump in the run. Why delay any longer? There goes buffs. Look at that. Arbais changes forms. Places the taunt, not a problem there. Get the AoE, decrease defense, and weaken. There you go. Provoke is out. We got some block buffs, but not fully. And now we're going and working it. Then we get that HP burn in there, which is really nice. Now, one of the things you can always do, you can start with HP burn if you feel like that's better for your team, right? How you start the fight is always going to be a little bit, it's always a choice in how you go about it, right? You don't have to do it one way or the other. The thing is, they're going to rotate through these skills, right? So you'll end up getting the stuff that you want out as it goes by. But there you go. So obviously it gets cleansed off, right? We weren't able to keep the provoke up right there. Not common. Usually we keep it up full time, but occasionally, especially in the early stuff when we're still starting to get ramped up, that's not an uncommon thing for us. There you go. Decreased defense and weaken is out. We've got the provoke out as well. Decreased attack has been spread. Now we're getting some more of the stuff. HP burn, leech, all the debuffs are going out there, and this is going to be a prime opportunity for Rathalos to start really doing some significant damage as he goes through here, right? Not too shabby. I mean, he's going to be hitting for, you know, 300,000 a hit essentially all the time, and then that's only going to ramp up when every fifth hit, when he gets that big explosion of damage to it. And of course, when that A2 starts AoEing, that every other time he uses that, that's really effective as well. So yeah, it's definitely nice. Now, would I love to put Rathalos in the lead and reset his skills? Absolutely I would, but I was really focused on keeping that taunt up for the full fight, and obviously I still have some work to do on that. One of the problems with Arbais is we get too many buffs on our team. So I do have some work to do as far as optimizing it, making sure that we program it so he only gets 10 buffs up, never more than that. That would definitely be a thing that definitely is a thing that negatively affects our damage results. One of the cool things about Finna, obviously, is that we're getting all these extra buffs up and we're getting them up full time. The protection set is really nice because each one of those is adding 5% damage for us. So Rathalos essentially is getting extra 15% damage because of the 3 buffs that are being placed by Finna on him, which is, I would say, pretty significant, right? That's not insignificant amount of damage there. And so I'm a big fan of that. I definitely like that as far as like just upping the damage potential. And I think that's really where she shines. This is why I say a protection set on her is absolutely the way to go. You can build her a bunch of different ways, but like the truth of the matter is she's a mid-level damage dealer, right? She's a fairly low base attack. She doesn't, I mean, from what I could tell, the multipliers aren't crazy. I haven't really checked those, to be honest, on hh.com, so that might be something I'd want to do and just like confirm my suspicions about her. But you know, in general, I would say she's kind of, you know, mid as far as damage dealing. What does, like I said, takes her to that next level is, of course, the fact that when she has allies, she can do so much in the kit. And then that protection set, maybe she doesn't do damage, but she's going to help enable the rest of the team too. I love watching Rathalos do those big AoE hits. It's so nice to see. Obviously, I have them built extremely tanky right now, extremely tough. You know, those Slayer procs are insanely strong, but you can see even 1 million damage on the A1, not too shabby. So he's really, really good. You know, he's not in like a lethal set, right? Which would be probably the ideal set. I have him in a Slayer set, which is one of the hardest damage dealing sets, but it really only activates that ignore damage on the AoE hits. So it is a little bit more limited in its damage potential in that sense for a champion like Rathalos, who has a lot of, or has some single target hits in his kit too. But then again, doesn't seem like it's mattering all that much, right? Dropping 1.5 million damage on a single attack, not too shabby. Generally, this team can do about 1 million damage per turn of the boss. We're outpacing that right now, but by the end, that's probably where we're going to be. And this is the kind of team that will last a full 1500 turn count. Now, the one negative is that Arbais will generally outrun her taunt buff. Like you saw it, right? Like that was bad timing, but she literally outran the taunt buff right before she gets to take another turn. And then they ate Rathalos, right? That's kind of the worst scenario. And so in these scenarios, this is where I'm going to target that head. Periodically, this will happen. Slower than it will for most champions on most teams, but it will happen. All I have to do is target that head. We'll be able to knock it out. Not to mention we have AoE HP burn. That alone should do the work for us. And because Rathalos is the first one eaten, he's also going to be the last one. You know, Eden is still gonna, the enemies have to go through all the other champions first. So the chances are this won't be an issue again going forward. Again, too many buffs on our champion, right? That's the biggest negative out of him, out of Arbais. I do really need to tone that down and figure that out to make it a little bit more effective for us. And once I do that, we should be in good shape. But that's obviously a concern when building this team and perfecting it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm wondering if he's gonna get 6 buffs from that. Stone Skin 2 continuous heals, actually 10th. Kind of interesting, honestly. Like it should be, oh, and then we're getting, yeah, that's, oh, and we're getting increased speed and increased defense from Tuhanarok. That's pumping it up even further. And then of course he has the blessing buff. That's probably the one we should be taking off. For sure, that's the one we should be taking off. But yeah, so anyway, you can see there's a lot of stuff going on there as far as trying to, you know, limit the buffs that he has, you know, maximize, or that she has, maximize whatever. But as long as we can keep that taunt up, we're not going to get eaten, and we're going to do really good damage numbers. And you can see 50 turns in, 50 million damage, not too shabby. So let's go ahead. We can jump to the end of this, see the result of the run, and then you know, talk about that a little bit. All right, so let's take a look at the champions. And by the way, after looking at them, I realized I'm actually missing gear pieces on some of these champions, which I think just goes to show how powerful this kind of combination of teams can be. Anyway, getting back to it, we've got Arbais here. Now, I have Arbais in a 6-piece Sonic set, which honestly is probably one of the best ways you want to go with your, whatever your mischief tank is. A 6-piece Sonic set is insanely good because you ignore some of the turn meter decrease effects that the mischief head is going to place on them. It helps them stay in sync. So it's a really good build for me. Obviously, I have a lot of resistance, a fair amount of accuracy, so we can land the HP burn and we can resist the mischief tank, the mischief head. Now, one thing that Stone Skin can be stolen from you. So it is important to have enough resistance on that champion. Honestly, mine's still a little bit low for the difficulty we attempted. I would want to bump that up another probably 30 to 50 points if I can. That's something I probably can do. I just need to go about, you know, building that up in my champions, in my accessories, and get that done. But till then, this is a pretty solid build, obviously. Rathalos is obviously our main damage dealer. Now, I do have him in a 4-piece Slayer set, previously known as a Rathalos set, and that works really nicely, right? It is going to give him ignore defense. Actually, it doesn't give him any ignore defense. And the reason why I don't care about that so much is his A2 is already ignoring defense. That's his big damage dealing ability. Now, obviously, lethal, savage, that kind of stuff would help a lot with his A1, his A3. So it's not like it's not worth putting on. But instead, I opted just to maximize the damage stats that I do have. So his A2 is as strong as possible. The 4-piece Rathalos I like. One of the big things I like is I'm able to build him slower because he's getting a turn meter boost every time he does an AoE attack. So that just kind of helps with that part of it. And I just had some Rathalos pieces, but not enough to make a full build. So this is just kind of what's going to work for me right now. Obviously, really big damage stats. We do have the crit rate buff from Finna built into his kit. That's going to be really, really important as far as maximizing that out. And then, of course, we've got Tuhanarok, who apparently I've forgotten I stole the accuracy banner on. So that's probably another 20 speed that I lost here in this build, and another, you know, almost 100 accuracy. So yeah, this would definitely be better if I had that banner on. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. But to Hanorok, I like this kind of a build for a champion like her. Whenever she takes a turn, she removes debuffs. So in Relentless Gear, she's able to strip debuffs constantly. Now, I used her in previous teams where she was a mischief tank, or at least an alternate mischief tank. Hence the righteous, hence all the resistance we have on our build. In reality, I probably don't need that on her anymore, right? That's probably not something that I need on her at this point anymore, but it's not a bad thing for her build. She's not like our strongest damage dealer either. She can hit hard, but I don't really I'd rather build her for utility for whatever areas of the game I decide to drop her into. So I'm probably going to keep this kind of a build. I'll just make sure to add an accuracy banner to her instead. Then we have Molly. Molly is another champion missing a piece of gear. I didn't realize. Like I said, I've been re-gearing a lot of champions, and so I've been stealing pieces. One of the pieces I stole was her gloves. So again, that's about another 20 speed on this champion I should have. Not to mention another 40 or 50 accuracy as well, since I broke up the set. So those are things that would definitely be helpful. We'd land the provoke a little bit more often. We'd actually take turns more often. So both our provoke and our revive would happen a little bit more consistently. Obviously, I'm just worried about the accuracy with her. We did build her with resistance again because of the reflect damage buff she puts on herself. She makes a very good mischief tank. With this team, our primary tank is going to be Arbais, but it's good to have a secondary one with resistance. So if somebody else gets more buffs, that they're not getting stolen. Molly is a really good option for that. So obviously replacing that glove is something I want to do ASAP. Obviously support and defense trees are the main sources for her. I don't really need her to do damage, though she has good multipliers on her A1 and can hit decently hard. That's not my focus. So I'm really focused on making sure that her accuracy and her resistance are as high as possible. We do have Bellinor here. Now Bellinor I put in a Stalwart set. This is a really good cheat for attack-based champions that are squishy. By doing that, a lot of the AoE hits, like from the Head of Wrath, can be reduced by 30%. If you use Defiant set, that's great too. Just obviously half as effective. But this allows us to build Bellinor for damage while also giving him enough accuracy to land his debuffs and not worry about him surviving with only 2,000 defense on this champion, right? Obviously, there are times when he will go down, but that's why we have Molly in the team to help revive him. But yeah, there's a little trick that we can do to help keep champions alive. Another little trick, I'm just going to toss this tidbit in here. You'll notice I have 2 pieces of Rathalos gear on and 1 piece of Merciless gear. That's going to add a significant amount of stats to us. The Rathalos piece, the Slayer piece is adding 5 crit rate and 15 crit damage. The Merciless 1 piece is adding 10% attack. That's just my accessories. So if you have good accessories, they're always nice to really just kind of toss on your damage dealers because it just adds stats to them without really sacrificing anything. And then very last, of course, we have Finna, the Blade of Aravia. Now, Finna, I love this build, right? It's full protection set. So we're getting a lot of extra damage just with the buffs that she has on. I don't really have to worry about resistance with her. I don't have to worry about accuracy with her. She's not landing debuffs. She's not, she's putting up buffs, but half the time they're protected anyway. So I'm not really worried about any of that kind of stuff. We have other targets for the Mischief Head. So all I really need to do is build her fast and build her to survive, which is what I've done here. And I built her with crit rate, so she can deal a little bit of damage. She's not a damage dealer though. Like I said, her damage stats are not spectacular, so that's not really something I'm worried about. And as far as damage goes, I went pretty much Clan Boss Masteries, Demon Lord Masteries, and that works really nicely here. One thing to just point out here, to Hanorok got eaten. It's not a big deal when somebody else gets eaten. I don't even really have to target it because Rathalos is going to do an AoE attack basically every other hit. And then on top of that, we have the HP burn going, which really does a lot of the work for us anyhow. So I don't really have to do a whole lot. She's going to get freed. Now I can always target it, and that'll work out great. But you can see right there, the A3 pops out, easy cleanse, easy freeing on that because he just does so much stupid damage. So it's not really necessary. Even Arbais, not Arbais, Finna died a second ago, and we were able to bring her back with Molly. It's a very resilient team in that sense, which is really, really nice. I would say one of the perfect pairings in a team like this would be Nergigante Archer, because not only does she bring a plethora of debuffs that are very helpful, but she also brings that very consistent provoke as well. And that would be somebody I would want to bring in for maybe one of these roles. Would be a really good spot, a good person to do that with. She also brings in insane healing, right? So That's one of those champions that would fit really well in a team like this. Basically, for this team to work super well, you just want champions with multiple roles that can fill a lot of the different gaps of your teams. And if you can do that, you're going to have a lot of success. One of the other things you can do is like you can interrupt. So right here, we have a couple people that just died. I really need to bring them back. So I'm actually going to put that ability on Molly there. I figure why not, right? Get that going. Let her then have the revive ability back. And I can just manual that for a couple turns if I need to. Right? As soon as she takes a turn, I'll be good to go. It's a big, it's a big ask to have her take a couple turns. But there we go. Let's bring back Rathalos. Now we've got our damage dealer back. Boy, is that helpful for us. And we can start using that, I think, to really good effect. Obviously, I forgot about that. I have Tuhana Rock in a Relentless set. That helps her just take turn after turn after turn, keep us healthy, cleanse us, do a whole bunch of different stuff. That's kind of fun, actually. Forgot about that. But there we go. We obviously don't have a whole lot going on there. We need to reset our skills one more time. Would be good. But we're kind of in that weird stage here. There we go. Don't need to provoke, actually. Now that I think about it. Doesn't matter. Reset the skills again. One more time. Even though that, yes, we are victims potentially of being eaten. We don't have the taunt up right now. But the skills still go on their own cooldowns, right? So you can skip a turn here and there, and it is okay. But by resetting Molly's abilities one more time, we can hopefully go ahead and bring back Bellinor. Good timing on that. Go ahead and drop some debuffs out there, and we're back to auto, and we should be smooth sailing. So, if you're one of those people that pays attention on the run as it's going on, that's great. You can really do a lot to maximize things. Rathalos just killed himself again because, that's what he does. That just makes sense. Sure, that's a thing. So again, we can go ahead and reset the ability on Molly. This is one of those things where it's like, I kind of, please don't die. just simply, please don't die. Don't do that. That's really annoying of you. I don't appreciate it. That would be great if you could maybe not do that. Okay, her revive is going to be back next turn. We didn't get the reset off in time. That's fine. So she'll go ahead and bring Rathalos back on her next turn, thankfully. And that'll be really, really good for us. By prioritizing the revive, of course, it'll only happen when somebody dies, but that means that it'll happen ASAP, which is the advantageous choice in that matter. But there we go. We're rocking and rolling again. Everybody's alive. Yeah, we missed some decapitated head damage, but that's all right. We're again a little bit behind our million damage per turn count, but you can see we're still doing pretty darn good here. 91 million for 100 turns is not too shabby, I would say, and it's only going to get better from this point forward. Hey, 300 million. I was really hoping we get 300 million on this team. It's not a bad result at all. I'm actually really happy with this. You can see we did hit the turn limit. That's what killed us. This team survives the entire time. Now, it's not like a perfect team, right? We definitely had champions go down multiple times. Had to wait on the revive with Molly. I did have to do a little bit of manualing with Finna just to reset Molly's revive ability a little faster. It's not like super necessary. Generally, I can run this full auto and it should reach the turn limit. There's always like RNG factors, right? But generally, it will do that regardless. Just obviously, the more you want to optimize a run, the more you pay attention to it. Another thing that I forgot, I thought I had put curse set on one of these champions, but I just don't have enough I really don't have enough curse set in my kit. That would do a huge damage boost for me. Probably add another 100 million damage to this squad as a whole. I mean, when Rathalos hits so hard, you can add curse to that. That just does massive damage multiplying. And when you can do that, that means you're also taking the heads down faster. So you're hitting the decapitated heads more often. It means they have less opportunities to actually eat your champions. There's a lot of stuff that would actually benefit us in this if I could get a curse set on one of these champions. Obviously, Arbais is phenomenal, right? Phenomenal champion. I am thinking about maybe trying to find a way to replace Tuhanarok. And the reason why, she's great. She gets us that block buffs, which I think is helpful. Not always necessary. We get enough HP burn where we could probably do without it. Some RNG would probably kill us occasionally, but just reset and try it again. But one of the things is Tuhanarok is giving us so many extra buffs. Arbais is overfilling her buff bar. And so we're not keeping taunt on for the full fight. That means some champions are getting eaten from time to time. Without that, we would never get eaten. And that would be a really nice thing for our damage and our outlook overall. So that might be something I look at. Perhaps what I do is I replace Tuhanarok with somebody like an Arbiter. Arbiter's great. She has an AoE revive. She also has a lot of turn meter boost in her kit. And if I did replace that, we would lose the increased speed buff, which would suck. But with all that turn meter boost, it could work, and we're not adding additional buffs to our team. So Arbais isn't, being overfilled on our buff bar. There's some stuff I have to work out when it really comes to that. I mean, if we did that, we could also potentially replace Molly as well. So there's some consideration to be done here. There's some options that I have at my disposal. And I'm going to have to think about that and see if I can improve it. But you know what? If I can do 300 million on Brutal Hydra, that is a heck of a result. Well, not too bad. Putting up 300 million on Brutal for me is a huge accomplishment. And this was really a fun team to build and conceive. And it really all starts and ends with Finna. Finna is really the go-to to making this team work. Obviously, you can do this without her. And you can do this without, well, you can't do this without her. She's resetting those skills, right? That's important. But you could definitely do this without Arbais, right? I mean, I think Arbais is such a good champion for this. But there's definitely other options. And I think, honestly, long term, I really need to start looking at, can I use Emic in that role? Emic bringing his own skill cooldown ability could be really good. And of course, unkillable on everybody is always a nice thing to have. And he has his own taunt skill too. So there's definitely some other options here for people that can do this role. I mean, on the other hand, a champion like Duodan could work really nicely, right? He's got AoEs on his A1. That means he'll benefit more from the counterattack. I could put him into a provoke or a curse set and actually get a lot of benefit out of that. That might be a possible way to go about it. He also has some cleanse abilities on that A1. So maybe then I could replace Tuhanarok and bring in another champion from the High Elf faction. That way we're potentially getting some of the other additional benefits from Finna, right? There's a lot of ways to go about building a team like this. And you just kind of want to explore all the options and see what's going to be the best way. I don't know. Who knows? We're going to have to play around and find some stuff out. But it does show, I think, the potential of what Finna can do for your team, especially in Hydra, where I think is going to be one of her strongest spots. Arbais is a great champion. I should probably just do a spotlight on her anyway. But yeah, she's going to be a great champion regardless. And most of these champions are really good. But figuring out how to use Finna, I think is a real trick here and a lot of fun. I've had a hard time trying to build a team with Rathalos. I think he's such a kind of tricky champion to use, in all honesty. But this seems to be the kind of team that would work really well with him. Not only is he benefiting from Heaven Cast, he's benefiting from all the buffs that we're getting from Finna. And on top of that, we're able to utilize more skills so that HP burns out so he can actually do the work that we want him to do. So without putting him in like a double Yumeko team, I think this is kind of one of the better ways to fully utilize Rathalos. Obviously, if you have better gear than I do, which a lot of you do, you're going to get even better results than this. So anyway, that's the video, guys. Hopefully you found this interesting. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. I'd love to hear some suggestions that you have of champions you could pair with Finna to really optimize her. Were there any mistakes in this build or champions you would substitute in? Any high elf champions that you're like, oh, that would be a really great champion to bring in for this kind of a squad? I'd love to hear all of that, in all honesty. So thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. It goes a long, long way to supporting this channel, and about half of you aren't subscribed to my channel. So it'd be a really nice boost if a few of you would take the time to do that. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Until next we meet. Oh my gosh. I'm the Deadwood Jedi.